This is how a professional ballerina customizes her pointe shoes for a show.
Destroy them, basically. To everybody else, it looks like we're destroying them. Just bang it out a little bit. It's actually kind of fun. I enjoy it, kind of.
But after just one day of rehearsing and performing leaps, turns, and pirouettes, the shoes will be completely unusable.
This is a used shoe.
That's why New York City Ballet dancers go through about 7,000 pairs every year. And all of them come from Freed of London, which has been one of the world's leading ballet shoe manufacturers for nearly 80 years.
We supply all over the world. There really isn't a country that we don't work with in some capacity.
Its methods haven't changed much over the decades. Every single shoe still has to be formed and stitched, mostly by hand. But this traditional approach makes it hard to keep up with the nonstop demand from some of the largest ballet companies in the world.
We are constantly playing catch up.
Now, some shoemakers are saying it's time to update this century-old design.
There's a lot of unnecessary pain that modern materials can alleviate.
So why do ballerinas go through so many pairs? And why haven't the shoes changed much in over a century? We went behind the scenes with the New York City Ballet and Freed of London to see how pointe shoes became such a big business.
This is the NFL for ballet. It's no different than like a football player, except we have to look really pretty while we're doing it. So.
The Nutcracker is the New York City Ballet's Super Bowl, bringing in about $20 million per season. Rehearsals start only 2 weeks before opening night.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. We have 6 weeks of Nutcracker shows.
That means ballerinas like Grace Scheffel will likely break in a new pair of shoes every single day during the show's run.
It's honestly the rehearsals during the day that kill your shoes. We typically run it at least 2 or 3 times per rehearsal. When you think about the idea of the amount of things that we do on our toes, it's not something that humans are supposed to do.
By the end of a rehearsal, and only 2 wears, this is what Grace's shoe looks like.
So the fabric on the tip of the box usually goes first, and then I can see kind of the wear and the dirt and the rosin kind of building up on the inside of the shoe.
The New York City Ballet spends nearly $1 million a year buying pointe shoes for its dancers. And Daniel Wong is the only one keeping track of them all.
Right now I have about 9,000 pairs of shoes in this room.
A pointe shoe has 3 main sections: the box, the vamp, and the shank, also known as the sole. The box is what makes a pointe shoe, well, a pointe shoe. It helps create the illusion of a dancer being on the very tip of their toes.
This has a platform right here that the dancer can stand on.
The vamp covers and supports the toes as they bend.
The measurement has to be very precise so that it doesn't get in the way.
The shank supports the dancer's arch while on pointe.
Strength of the shank can be different depending on what the dancer wants. So really every single piece of the shoe can be customized.
While a dancer is on pointe, the pressure on their feet and ankles feels like 12 times their weight. So if the fit of the shoe is even a little bit off, it could be dangerous.
You can injure yourself if you're not wearing the right shoe. You can injure yourself if a shoe is too soft for your foot. So it's just important to find, a shoe that fits you really well. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Dancers have preferences. My job is to make sure that they have shoes that they're comfortable with, but also don't get them injured.
Which one should we start with?
We're going to do a 4.5 heel pin. Is the heel secure?
I wouldn't mind raising it. I wouldn't say no to that.
Okay. Wow.
See, I like that. That's so much
Sometimes
more
they're
comfortable.
okay.
Finding the perfect fit can take years, and dancers go through many trial pairs before landing on the right one.
It's so much.
Oh my god, that's so much better.
It's so much better, and I feel better in them. You can kind of see there's like a 90-degree angle. I don't know how to show it, but there's like a 90-degree angle. That's like one of the customizations that I really like, just because standing on it and then rolling up to point feels a lot better. I've already had a few customs come in with these specs, meaning like the size and how short I wanted it.
Which one is that?
This is without cutting it. This is the 4.5.
The 4.5,
But this trial pair still isn't perfect.
if I can do this, it's a little bit too loose. She'll be able to wear them, but you know
It's just
they're
more
not the
comfortable.
best. It's not the best fit.
While Grace waits for her customs, she has to modify her trial shoes on her own.
Everyone's feet are different, so everybody kind of has a unique thing that they do to their shoes.
You could find all sorts of tools in Grace's dance bag.
Rubbing alcohol, this is to break in the shoes. This is jet glue, basically, so we put this in the tips of our shoes to keep the shoes hard. This is what makes it all possible. And I go through this quite quickly.
Grace can spend 30 minutes breaking in her shoes.
Destroy them, basically. To everybody else, it looks like we're destroying them. I'll stick the scissors in and then just rip it apart. And then I cut it. So I hold I put my heel down and then, there we go. That was a pretty good pop.
Scraping the bottom of the pointe shoes makes them less slippery.
Even though it's a lot to do, this is what works best for me. That is what a new pair of shoes kind of looks like. The boots are ready. I do feel a little bit bad because I know they work so hard on them. So, yeah.
The New York City Ballet buys all its shoes from Freed of London, one of the first companies to customize shoes to dancers' feet back in 1929.
Mr. Freed had been a pointe shoemaker for another company, and he wasn't very satisfied with how the shoes were being produced. Before Mr. Freed, the pointe shoe was very much one size, one width, so a dancer had to squeeze their foot into it. And he came up with this concept, which seems so normal today, of making different width fittings.
They all start with stapling a leather sole to a mold.
And this is where the consistency comes into it. Just make sure they're all the same.
Shoemakers like Alan Doherty make custom shoes for specific dancers. He's currently assigned to more than 600 ballerinas.
He is really one of our most popular makers.
But the factory only has 24 shoemakers who make customs, and they supply some of the largest ballet companies in the world, including the Royal Ballet in London, the American Ballet Theatre, and the Paris Opera Ballet.
We are constantly playing catch up. Many of our pointe shoe makers, their work schedule is booked right through to the end of 2026. When a maker retires, we start planning nearly 2 years in advance, where we start to look at what other makers are similar in their characteristic of shoe, and looking at how we can transfer and move dancers from one maker to the other.
Still, Freed manages to pump out about 2,500 pairs a week. Most of the process is done by hand.
Now here comes the messy bit.
The founder of the company, Friedrich Freed himself, created the paste that makes up the box, which the company keeps secret.
It's basically flour, water, and a few secret ingredients, which I'm not allowed to tell. It's like putting your hand in porridge.
The paste is what makes the shoes so malleable, adapting to the exact shape of a dancer's foot. But it's also why they wear out so quickly. Alan can make 34 pairs in a single day.
So everyone makes different amounts. Some make 28, some make 30, some make 32, other 34s, one does 41.
Putting in the pleats is the hardest and most crucial step.
What this consists of is twist and pull. It's what gives them the strength, the pleats. We try and be precise as best we can. It is a handmade job, so we can't be perfect all the time. Now they're ready for stitching.
Sewing and stitching are the only steps where they use machines.
Most of our competitors have now closed their home or native production and moved offshore and gone into a much more automated, sort of machine-made approach. But we still are true to the beginning idea, which is hand-making shoes, bespoking shoes, giving the dancer what they need.
But pointe shoes haven't always been made the same way. When ballet started in 15th century Italy, dancers wore shoes with heels. But in the 1730s, Marie Camagot, a dancer with the Paris Opera Ballet, removed them so she could move more freely. Then, in 1796, the French dancer and choreographer Charles Didelot invented a wire rigging system that lifted dancers to make it seem like they were floating on the tips of their toes. For decades afterwards, dancers tried to create the same effect without wires. At first, they stuffed their soft slippers with wool and used their own strength to stand on their toes. In the late 19th century, Italian shoemakers added a toe box to help support the dancer's weight. And in the 1900s, the Russian ballet dancer Anna Pavlova added stiff leather shanks to support the bottom of her feet. By the 1920s, her design had become standardized as the modern pointe shoe. But some pointe shoemakers say it's time to update the century-old design.
Basketball players aren't wearing Converse anymore. Tennis players are not using wooden tennis rackets. Ballet dancers are the most elite athletes of all. Shouldn't they benefit from modern materials?
Eliza Minden started working on a modern design because of her firsthand experience as a ballet dancer.
When I was finally allowed to get my first pair of pointe shoes, I was so disappointed at how painful they were. And that put the idea in my mind that it shouldn't have to be this painful.
Now her company, Gaynor Minden in New York City, says it sells shoes that can last 5 times longer than traditional ones.
So in a traditionally made shoe, the toe box, which is part of the support, is made of some kind of paper product. Gaynor Minden has a synthetic shank, midsole, and toe box unit. This is a thermoplastic elastomeric. This is the kind of material that you find in scuba fins. It will not break, so you can flex it like this over and over and over again, and it won't break, it won't weaken, it basically won't change. The sock liner is very resilient, it never bottoms out, and it's extremely comfortable. We also use pour-on here under the heel, which makes it much more comfortable. So when you land from a jump, your heel comes down, you're not getting the edge of the shank digging into your heel.
Start your footing. Come into the boutique here. You can take the seat here. Okay. Get comfortable. Your right foot into here.
Dancers get fit in a similar way they would for traditional shoes. And Gaynor Minden offers dozens of customizations.
So the shoes, I have been wearing them since February, so about 8 months now. Of course, I have other shoes that I rotate them with, but they will last you a while, which is great.
And because the shoes have flexible material and no pleats, dancers don't have to break them in.
You don't really have to do a lot of work, just maybe like sew your ribbons and elastics and you're good to go.
There was a time when Gaynor Mindens were called cheater shoes because dancers felt that they allowed you to just park up there on point and not engage your muscles and use them correctly. Any shoe that is too stiff can be a cheater shoe. Doesn't matter what it's made of.
Today, Gaynor Minden provides shoes for dancers at over 200 ballet companies around the world. But Eliza says that changing minds in the industry is still an uphill battle.
It wasn't until around the year 2000 was when we began to really grow, and we expanded internationally a great deal. Ballet is very, very traditional. I think dancers were skeptical of anything that offered to make their job easier. We have to win over our customers one at a time.
But for Grace, Freed's shoes still set the standard.
For me, it's the best shoe to dance in. They're really pretty and they're not bulky. They're a small shoe that just is like a little addition to your foot. I like that we have cardboard in ours just because the shank bends more and it molds to your feet more. everybody does so many different things, I feel like. It would be hard to create a modernized version that fits everybody's taste. For the type of dancing we do, every single step is thought about and is done and is rolled through by your feet. So Freeds really allow us to do that.
Most other pointe shoe companies do customizations, but maybe not to the degree that Freed does. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the dancer and what makes her perform her best.
They're not meant to be these like super comfortable shoes. They're meant to help you dance on your toes. They've got to be a little bit uncomfortable in order for you to do that. It's painful, but it's also, I mean, you get used to it.
For the night of the performance, pointe shoes shouldn't only be comfortable, they also need to look the part. And that's Tim Foster's job.
Okay.
If I could possibly.
Sure. Awesome. Well, this is what happens all the time. There'll be about 20 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
They'll be up here. I get all kinds of little notes. This one is, hi, Tim. May I have these dyed a light flesh tone? Thanks, Gabby. A yellow marzipan, please, for both shoes, Lauren Colette. So they leave me notes and tell me what they need.
Some of the shoes need to be dyed to match a dancer's skin tone. Others are painted to match their costumes. During Nutcracker season, Tim paints over 100 pairs in a week.
Many times I'll get them a day ahead of time. There's a few times where they come the last minute, but it's, if I'm available, we just do it and they take them and run. Beautiful. Yes.
What would happen if it wasn't dry in time?
It's always dry in time. It has to be dry in time.
You can't just bring your shoes up 30 minutes before the show and expect that they're ready in time. You have to really think about, okay, I need shoes for this. I am dancing this, and this week. I have to make sure I have at least 2 pairs or something.
Before showtime, Grace does a final break-in to make sure her shoes are ready.
When you bang it on the wall, you're just softening the bottom of it so that it's not as loud when you dance on stage.
For Grace, these shoes have helped her reach a dream she's had since she was a child.
At my 5th grade graduation, there's a video of me saying, in the future, I'm going to be a professional ballet dancer with the New York City Ballet. And it happened, and I'm very lucky and happy that it did happen. Am I a button at all in the back? I thought I heard you talk. No, I just really Thank you. Once we're in our costumes, you see everybody backstage just warming up their feet, making sure that they feel super comfortable in their shoes. And that they look good. It's just making sure that you can do what you need to do in that pair of shoes. There's nowhere else in the world I'd ever want to be. The dream is to be a principal. But I feel like already being here, I've accomplished one of my dreams, which is being in the company. I would like to make people feel something when they watch me. Because I remember watching people when I was younger and being like, oh my gosh, I want to make people feel like that. It's such a beautiful art form, but it's such an athletic art form too. The shoe is an addition to a dancer. A dancer is themselves, and they're so incredible by themselves. The pointe shoes just aid them.